So one thing jumps off the page when you look at this matchup, and that's William Zepeda's punch volume. That's what this whole fight is marketed around. That's what this whole fight is supposed to be about. How will Shakur Stevenson, who is so often derided for being a boring fighter, how will he respond to the most tenacious pressure fighter in current high-level professional boxing? William Zepeda barely does anything but punch. He just punches and punches and punches. He's like a tornado. And in a vacuum, sure, you can say that Zepeda hasn't faced the highest level competition in his career, but in a vacuum, is this fight not Shakur Stevenson stepping into the ring against someone who is 33-0 from standing directly in front of his opposition and, in the most part, blowing them away? This guy has so many TKOs on his record, so many doctor stoppages on his record. This guy damages the guys that stand in the ring across from him, even if Zepeda might not have that one-punch power. But in the same way that Shakur Stevenson has never fought a high-level puncher like Zepeda or someone who punches at the volume that Zepeda does, Zepeda has never faced a boxer with the skill level or the defensive acumen of Shakur Stevenson. But when it comes to actually analyzing this matchup, and who do I think is actually going to dictate the tempo and set the pace? Shakur. Maybe Zepeda for the first couple of rounds, but Stevenson isn't even a slow starter. I think Zepeda is just going to have a ton of energy and be able to maybe get Stevenson on the ropes for a bit, apply some pressure in the first couple rounds. But Stevenson is going to figure this out. Stevenson has too good of an engine, he's got too much energy, and he's too good of a counterpuncher to just stand right in front of Zepeda for too long. If Stevenson actually stands in front of Zepeda for too long in this fight, I'm low-key kind of going to be a little mad. That really can't be the game plan for Stevenson. Like, the whole theory for this young generation of American boxers, clearly, protect yourself and don't take damage. And Stevenson is going to do that, even if he's in there against a guy who throws 100 punches around. And it's very true that for throwing all of those punches against a counterpuncher like Stevenson, and especially someone who moves and counterpunches at the same time the way Stevenson can, all you're doing in a certain way is just giving Stevenson opening after opening after opening after opening. When I was watching the Tevin Farmer fight, and a lot of Zepeda fights, it is frustrating how difficult it seems to be to counterpunch, right? And I think that's the argument for Zepeda here, that if he can actually keep that volume up over 12 rounds, which I doubt against a counterpuncher like Stevenson, and I'll tell you why in a minute. But it will be interesting to see if Zepeda can really start getting off and can really start landing on Stevenson, and especially if he can land to the body, which again I also doubt because Stevenson is not going to just stand there and let him land to the body. Will there be a point where that movement just starts to go away from Stevenson, where he starts to lose the timing and the quickness and the preciseness of his counters? Because I'm sure for Shakur at the beginning of the fight, those things will all be there. He's going to be snapping off some counter punches against Zepeda in the first couple rounds, and I'll be very worried if he doesn't. But Zepeda can absolutely prove here that his punch volume is on a different level from anyone else, right? And I don't just mean that in terms of the statistical way. I mean that in terms of the way that it can affect a fight. We're about to find out, and Zepeda is about to find out as well, if his sheer volume punching is enough to win fights at the very highest level of the sport. And I ultimately think what we're going to find out next Saturday is that the answer is in fact no. Because Shakur Stevenson is a very accurate counterpuncher with excellent timing. And in boxing, the punches that floor you, like the punch that knocked down Zepeda against Tevin Farmer, are the punches that you don't see coming. And Stevenson is very capable of landing those punches on Zepeda. And let's not pretend for 1 second that Zepeda is not going to wear himself out throwing all the punches in the world. This is the biggest stage he's ever been on. This is the biggest fight of his entire career. This is the best opposition of his entire career. You can bet your bottom dollar William Zepeda wants to knock Shakur Stevenson out cold. Shakur Stevenson, I would be remarkably surprised if that's how this fight ends. Vanishingly small possibility that after a war of attrition over 12 rounds where Stevenson gets off to a bad start and Zepeda just pounds him to the body for the whole fight, maybe Stevenson can get KO'd in round 12, but I think Stevenson can KO Zepeda way, way sooner than that, because if Stevenson really uses his movement right, really uses his hands right, keeps Zepeda away, provides counterpunching, and especially if he hits him with big counter shots to the body, Zepeda's not going to be able to keep that volume up. And I think Stevenson, starting in, I think honestly, depending on just how much Zepeda wears himself out, chasing Stevenson around the ring, because you better believe Stevenson is going to run. He can say all he wants to that he's not going to run to try to sell the fight, but he doesn't want to get CTE, man. He doesn't want to get hit in the head over and over again. He's not going to fight a guy that provides this kind of volume and not, quote unquote, run a little bit. The man is going to use the ring. The man is going to box. And Zepeda is going to have to chase him, and that's going to tire him out. And then round 7, round 8, Stevenson can come in and get the finish, and I think that's what he's counting on. Stevenson can come out here and say he's going to come for violence and come for war. And the first couple rounds be pretty action-packed, but Steve, at some point, at latest, round 3, round 4, Stevenson is going to start boxing, and that's going to wear Zepeda out. And once Zepeda gets tired, those counter punches aren't going to stop being precise. Zepeda is a much better fighter than Josh Padley, who is Stevenson's most recent opponent. But Stevenson let Padley trade with him. He sort of engaged with him in a sort of it's not that he didn't box like Shakur Stevenson, but it was definitely a fight. He was willing to stand in the pocket and trade with Padley. But ultimately, it was the big, precise counter shots to the body that started. It just took too much energy from Padley for him to keep standing. Even if Stevenson didn't have the most power to his shots, the shots that got through were able to damage Padley and knock him down and win Shakur Stevenson the fight. And I think that in terms of draining his own gas tank, William Zepeda is a fighter who's very, very willing to help Shakur Stevenson. So my pick for this fight is actually going to be Shakur Stevenson by a late round TKO. I think that it's very true, like I said before, that Stevenson has never faced a fighter like Zepeda, but Zepeda has never faced a fighter like Stevenson either. And Shakur Stevenson has already shown that he's willing to dictate the tempo of a fight and slow a fight down in order to win. And I think that you are going to see some of the lowest volume rounds out of William Zepeda that you've ever seen in his career. Boxing is a conversational sport. It's got to be the most conversational sport that exists. And there are a lot of questions that Shakur Stevenson can ask William Zepeda that William Zepeda has never been asked before. There's only one question William Zepeda can ask Shakur Stevenson that he hasn't been asked before, and that's punch, 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 punch. Look how many punches I can throw at you. I don't think Shakur Stevenson is going to be that shocked by William Zepeda, especially that honestly, William Zepeda doesn't really seem to have that one big shot to knock you out. He doesn't really seem to have that individual punch power that, Stevenson doesn't have power. But when you time it with but when you combine it with his timing and his precision, it can sure look like power. So, maybe I'm going to come back here with my tail between my legs and Shakur Stevenson will have been utterly fraud checked, but I'm picking Shakur Stevenson by a late round KO for this one, and we'll see how this one turns out. I'm going to do a lot more boxing predictions in the future just like this one. We're absolutely going to have a video like this for Pacquiao Barrios. We're absolutely going to have a video like this for Usyk Dubois too, and there's going to be a big video for Canelo versus Crawford, so keep an eye out and like and subscribe, of course. I don't say that enough in my videos. Like and subscribe to the channel. That last Yankees rant did really, really good. And I'm excited to keep making boxing, MMA, and, of course, baseball, which is my bread and butter content for all of you guys. So thank you very much, and stay tuned.